maybe we should note that this meeting is being streamed to YouTube. And it is not being shown on the television channel because we're not streaming from the council chambers. So it is a little bit different, but people can watch via YouTube.
Oh boy, I finally get on YouTube.
Yeah, I see. Everybody's looking good on YouTube.
Perfect.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. Should we get started?
Might as well.
We're here. Welcome to the July 23rd meeting of the Waterways Advisory Committee. And it's a pleasure seeing you all, if not being in the same room. First item will be the roll call. Michelle, do you want to do that part?
Yes. Carol Quant?
Here.
Steve Rabinowitz?
Here.
Mark Neely?
I do see him.
I see him.
Yeah.
All right.
Muted? No, I'm good.
Kevin C.
Here.
Arthur
It's all
Thank
right. No, or Dikey.
you. Okay. Perfect. And then Adam Sharon, who I am not seeing present today, and Charles Carter, who I am also not seeing present today.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to join us. Thank you. We have a couple people from the staff too. Do you want to, I saw Steve Brady there for a minute. In addition to Michelle and Amy. I don't see him though. Are you there, Steve?
Yeah, I'll note that Steve Brady is just in attendance, and we also may have Jeremy Gundy, who does park maintenance.
Okay.
So they will be here for our item related to the Prince Memorial Greenway.
Okay.
Partly to monitor.
That's fine. Next is Waterways Advisory Committee reports. Any reports by any of the members? I assume that's the members unless that's Amy's. No, there's a department report coming up. Any reports from the members?
Not for me.
Me neither. Public comments on any items not listed on the agenda?
So for anybody in attendance who would like to comment on anything not on the agenda, there is a option to raise your hand. If you go ahead and raise your hand, I'll be able to allow you to speak.
Also, if you have comments on any items that are on the agenda, please let us know if we don't call that out, because we certainly encourage participation from the public. Okay, department report. Amy, is that you?
Yeah, so this is our first meeting in this virtual environment. So I thought I would just give you a little update on what's going on in the department. So shortly after the shelter in place order, we did pivot to accepting applications virtually, remotely. And we've actually been very successful. Staff's done a great job in creating a lot of new processes and using a lot of new technology. And same with applicants. So we have received a similar number of applications that we would normally during this time period. And we've actually taken in quite a few large housing projects, which is really exciting, especially with the economic situation, seeing some of these projects that we've been expecting really continuing to move through the process. And as far as some of the other efforts going on, the general plan update has officially kicked off. We did hire a consultant team, so it's PlaceWorks and MIG, and they are fully engaged right now and have drafted a community involvement strategy. And that will be going to the City Council August 18th, but we have been doing outreach on this plan. And it's not going to be a fixed plan to encourage outreach, but it will be fluid through the process because we've already had to move a lot of activities in a remote fashion and figure out how to do this really meaningful engagement in a virtual way. So we will kind of correct course as we go through the 3-year project. But we did have a community meeting last Saturday, and there will be another one this Saturday that will be held in Spanish. And as part of that effort, it will also include an update of the climate action plan. We are also updating hazard mitigation plan. There's actually a countywide hazard mitigation plan grant that we're engaged in. And then we've also received a grant from Kaiser to do increased outreach and then also healthy communities work. So we are still working on identifying the best way to go out for, we will be hiring a staff member for that position and through that grant. And then we will also be looking at consultant assistance for some of the outreach components. So that work plan is just getting finalized now. And then some of the other efforts that we're working on right now, we did receive a grant from the state under Senate Bill 2 to do some work to further and promote housing. So we will have 2 requests for proposals going out in the next month. One for creating an ordinance around missing middle housing, and another to do a focused historic survey for the downtown area. And that will help us identify structures that do need to be preserved and will be designated historic and rezoned appropriately. And so that's kind of just a snapshot of what's going on. The entire team's been working from home and been doing a fantastic job. And many people have actually been getting more done than they usually do, those that don't have kids on their feet. But and I also wanted to note for our next meeting in August, we will be bringing forward an item as requested related to the Prince Memorial Greenway and maintenance. There is an item on today's agenda, which I will let the chair talk about a little bit later, but we are working on a more robust item with staff from parks and from maintenance to talk about the Prince Memorial Greenway in specifically. So that's my department report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Looks like Arthur, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Just who on MIG is working with you?
So it's actually a different team than you're probably used to working with from the County of Sonoma. So MIG has a long range team as well. So Dan Amston is our lead and out of the Sacramento office. And then Jamila Jordan is our co-lead that is working on outreach.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. The upcoming virtual meetings for the public, are we encouraged to participate in those?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
The one this Saturday is in Spanish, but we have we'll have many more coming up, and I'll talk a little bit more about the downtown plan and that outreach effort when we get to that item as well.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the Marlowe Apartments, item 6.1. And Monet is going to introduce the item, but I think it might be good to let her finish her staff report before we ask questions. It might be just a little bit easier. So Monet, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Let me share my screen, my PowerPoint. So you can see my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start it. Good morning, Chair and members of the Waterways Advisory Committee. The project before you this morning is called Marlow Apartments, located at 3067 Marlow Road. The proposed project is a minor design review to allow a 6-foot-high wrought iron fence along Coffee Creek for Marlow Apartments. The fence will be placed 5 feet from top of the bank and will not result in any tree removal. The site is located within northwest quadrant of Santa Rosa, and it is zone PD, which stands for Planned Development. And in this policy statement, it requires that all the structures to be placed 5 feet from top of the Coffee Creek bank. And this is the site project, and the Coffee Creek, as you can see, is located on the east side of the site. This is a channelized creek, and per zoning code section 20-30.040, where a fully channelized waterway exists and the channel is owned by or under control of Sonoma County Water Agency, structures may be closer to top of the bank, provided that this encroachment into the setback area will not obstruct or impair the channel's hydraulic function, impede water agency access or maintenance of the channel. And here, this is the Marlow's apartment site plan. The red line here shows location of the fence, where the fence will be placed. And this slide shows the location of the proposed, the type of the proposed fence, and the location of the fence, which is going to be 5 feet placed from top of the bank. Currently, there is a concrete paving along the creek within the 5 feet setback from top of the bank. But the proposed fence will result in removing the existing concrete and place it further, so the fence and the new concrete will be placed 5 feet from top of the bank. This is a picture I took while I was there that shows location of the concrete paving and shows the location of the trees that are right placed on the bank, on the edge of the bank. There are trees, healthy redwood trees, that none of them will be removed as a result of this fence. And this slide shows Pauline and Pioneer Creek map. And based on this map, the Coffee Creek is an engineered channel, and Sonoma County Water Agency has an easement on the other side of where the fence will be located. And that was my presentation. With that, that is recommended by the Planning and Economic Development Department that the Waterways Advisory Committee provide comments on the proposed fence for the property located at 3076 Marlow Road. And I believe the applicant, his name is Pete, he's also available to answer questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Monet before we hear from the project applicant? I don't see any, so why don't we go ahead and.
I'm using that raise hand thing. Is that
Oh.
how we should be doing it?
Sure.
Okay. I just have, I think it's on page 6 of your PDF. I'm trying to read, I've been zooming in on it. I have my own copy and I can't quite read the writing. Can you help me with that? So it's where it shows the tree and then, you know, it's the plant, it's the lateral view.
Talking about the site plan in the PDF.
So it's the cross section.
Okay. This one?
Yeah. So I can't read the, so if you go to the other side, to the screen left-hand side, to the left. where the tree is and the fence. That's what I'm trying to see that area there. I can't read it on my PDF that I have.
I don't know why my page doesn't allow me to zoom into it. Just give me a second.
Okay, yeah, this is better than what I can see. So I'm not sure if I understood you, but was the concrete paving going to be relocated?
Correct. Oh,
So
so
is this a view of existing or the planned?
this is the planned one. The concrete will be removed further because the current concrete is somewhere like here. It's within the 5 feet top of the bank.
Okay, I see. And then is a fence just a solid fence with no gates or access through it?
It's gonna look like this, and I believe no access will be provided through it. It's just gonna be a wrought iron fence.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Are there any more questions?
I have a question.
And Kevin does as well.
Go ahead, Carol.
Am I going first? So I did not get out to this site. My apologies. I did go out to the previous review, which was of a PUD, I think, that wanted a fence. It was across the street from the Oliver's Market Shopping Center. Is this project along the same waterway? Is it a similar? I'm trying to get a frame of reference since I didn't make it out to this site. Is it in the same general area, the same channelized creek, similar?
I don't think this is in the same area as Oliver's. This is different location.
Okay, but is it the same kind of channelized drain, a glorified drainage ditch? Or is it truly a creek?
It's a creek. I believe it's a creek. It doesn't have the concrete style on the both sides. It's not that type of creek.
And there's no creek path of any kind?
By the creek path, do you mean the easement access that they have on top of the bank?
On many of our creeks, there's pedestrian walkways, bike paths, be it gravel or paved. My apologies again for not going on site.
So on the other side of the creek, Waterways agency has access for cars, but is on the other side of the creek, not where the fence is being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
And Monet, my question was, I think on your slide 7, you showed that photo of the pathway and the redwood trees. That was really helpful. Thanks. So that pathway that's shown there, is that coming out then? And basically the new fence will be where the pathway is. Is that pretty accurate?
This one? I believe that's what the applicant says. They will remove that concrete to place it 5 feet further from top of the bank.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thanks.
If there are no more questions, perhaps the project applicant would like to say something.
Really quick, Arthur has a question as well.
On mute. So what we don't see in this picture, and maybe the applicant will explain this, when the concrete is replaced to the right, and then the fence put in on it looks like on the left side of the existing concrete path, what's being displaced to the right of the concrete? I don't really have a feel for that. Thank you.
I didn't get that, Arthur, sorry.
Okay, so when you have the picture where the trees are on the left, and then you have the concrete path, and then it looks like there's some ground vegetation and maybe even a building structure there, I don't know. But the way this is explained to me is that the concrete path is going to be displaced to the right, and the fence is going to go basically between the trees and the new placement of the concrete path. When the new path goes in, what's it displacing? Because I see obviously it's going to displace vegetation, and then maybe buildings. What's happening on that side?
I believe the applicant Pete can explain that because some of the areas are not straight. They have little bit curves. So that's what the applicant probably will be able to explain them.
Thank you.
Okay, should we hear from the project applicant now? Okay.
Pete, you should have gotten a prompt to
Terrific,
allow
yeah.
yourself to speak.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you all for us finally having this meeting. I know these Zoom meetings can be time on a planning commission down here in Marin, and it's different, but I think it's really a great tool. Now, regarding the paving, the realignment of the walk, it is going to displace some landscaping along the backside of the building there. This effort is part of a complete landscape renovation for the project. It's about a 30-year-old apartment buildings, and we're renovating all of the landscaping as a part of this component. This is a component of the overall site redevelopment. We've had a lot of undesirable foot traffic from the creek area onto the site. There's some encampments that occur in the creek, and we would rather have a safer environment for our tenants in the development, and this is a part of that effort. We originally approached with a fence that was on the other side of those redwood trees, but due to the relative elevations, we thought it's to keep it off the stream bank, keep it away from the stream bank. We've reined that into the other side of the redwood trees, and so our walkway does get pretty skinny in a few spots because it's a natural form up against a rectilinear form. So that picture that you showed is probably the worst case scenario, where our walkway hits. There are a couple of fence components and some. It will get close to them. So the in what, maybe 3 spots where it's close. However, I think we still have room to landscape and refresh some of those areas as well. So we just feel that this is something that we want to do for our tenants. Is there any questions regarding the overall development intent? Then I think if there are no more questions, that's pretty much our presentation.
If I could, was there going to be any gates or access to the fence?
No, we're not looking to allow access through the fence.
Okay. So what part of the creek do you own?
I'm sorry?
What part of the creek does the owner own? I mean, how much of this does the owner own?
Well, the
Where's
property line goes to the center of the creek.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So who, and I'm not sure about the answer to this question, but whose responsibility is it to clean up trash on your property in the creek area?
That's a maintenance issue. If trash collects there, they do have a company that maintains the property. And so it's not our intent to turn our back on that's why it's an open fence. If we want to turn our back on it, it'd be a solid board fence. But no, we want to have the views to the creek and have it being something that's aesthetically pleasing. So when garbage or things tends to accumulate against fences, like it has further down toward the bike path, that's a solid board fence there, and it's pretty unchecked. It's our intent to allow visual access there, and so if we see some things that are unsightly and need to be dealt with, we can deal with them.
Understood, and I appreciate the design of the fence. But so we're moving we're putting a fence structure in, and now the maintenance crew is going to have no access to clean that. So
they can walk along the outside just like everybody else does.
I mean, go all the way down to one end and then come up the other.
That's why they call it work.
Okay.
Question? Are there other areas of the creek that are totally, what I'm hearing is that the fence will encompass the entire creek bed, not just the half that's currently part of the Marlowe project. Are there other parts of Santa Rosa Creeks that are totally fenced in by private property?
This is a question to me.
I don't know who it's a question to. Is this a precedent setter, or is this a common practice?
I can only talk to what we have there. I know the property that's to the south is completely fenced, and along the other pathways, it's fenced along the other creek access way. They're fenced often.
Steve Brady, do you want to answer this one?
All right, so is the question about fencing creeks throughout the city, if I heard that right?
The question is whether or not this is an unusual situation, or if it's common practice for private property to fence more than their quote middle of the creek property line.
Well, I would say, it's been fairly common in Santa Rosa for private property owners to have fences on creeks. So that's kind of been the historical condition. I think as things developed in the city with our Waterways plan in 1996 and the formation of this committee, it's been more about trying to open up the creek and be more of a public space. But I think with this fence, it's, it is open. So I don't think it is, turning their back on the creek. So to answer your question, there are fences are common throughout most of the creeks in Santa Rosa.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding to the applicant regarding revegetating the area where the walkway is. Is that part of your plan, is to revegetate with native plant materials?
Yes, we have there's some images on, I believe it's DD. It's one of our submittal sheets that has sort of general plant type and overall planting character that we'll be using. It's DD1 has lots of plant materials that we're considering for the project. We have not done specific planting plans yet, but once we get this entitlement, we'll be able to move forward into the next phase. But it's our intent to plant in any disturbed areas that are affected by this realignment of this walk. There's work throughout the site that we'll be doing, and this will be dovetailed in with that other work.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? We can go around and give our viewpoints after this part.
Just one more, Steve. What's the length of the fence? The approximate linear length? What's my question, Kurt?
I don't know the length of the fence. I just know the height of the fence.
Pete, do you
Maybe.
happen to know?
I I'd have to check. It looks 100, 200. I think it's just around, I'm going to say around 300 feet.
Okay, thank you.
It's a football length, something like that.
Okay. Should we, maybe we should go around and give our observations and recommendations. Art, do you want to start?
Okay. Yeah, I guess I pretty much voiced my concern with my questions. 300 feet, it means 150 feet for someone to walk the length to get to the middle section. It just seems prudent that lock gates could be installed for the maintenance crew. That's my only point with this. Thank you.
Mark? We can't hear you, Mark.
You're muted, Mark.
The Zoom thing. So how's that?
You're on.
Okay, good. Yeah, the same point that Art made was that it seems like a long stretch of fence without any kind of gate or any kind of ingress or egress for emergency situation or whatever. From a water quality standpoint, watershed standpoint, it doesn't seem like it's this is a big impact on the creek. That's all I have.
Thank you. Carol?
It's sad to see that we need to fence our creek. I understand why, however, and I agree some kind of gate with fire access, police access would be a good idea, in my opinion.
And I concur with the comments that have been made. It's a see-through fence, which is good. The vegetation from the path there'll be new vegetation put in adjacent to the creek, all good things. A little bit of a concern with fencing off the creek, but it is an open fence. And so I'm not opposed to this project. I think the comment regarding some gate to be able to at least access the creek for problems of litter or emergencies or any kind of that kind of a use, it could be a lock gate, would be fine. Are there any other comments anybody would like to make on the project before we move on?
I would just say I'm sorry. I just appreciate I know the wrought iron fence is expensive and it's an improvement for the tenants. So I just appreciate that.
Thank you, Art. Okay.
And I just want to weigh in too.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I think this project is nicely done. I went out and visited the site, and I appreciate the fact that the fence is being moved further away from the creek, and that it's a see-through fence, so we still get the eyes on the creek, which I think is great. I think it's interesting that we've seen 2 of these projects now to fence off areas of the creek because of foot traffic coming from the creek. So I don't know, I'm sure the city planning people know this better than us, but I wonder if this is a little just indicative of what's going on in the city these days. We're a little canary in the coal mine maybe for these types of security issues, but I think this project is really well done. I had a question or just a comment back to Steve, to your comment about whether the revegetation was going to be native or not. And I'm not sure I probably should know the answer to this, but I'm not sure if that's beyond the scope of this committee, though I imagine revegetating creek banks would be within our scope. But I love the idea of native plants. And I see the list here of things that are being used. I don't know which of these are native and which aren't, but I do know that the more we can plant natives, especially below the native redwood trees, the better it is for the birds and the bees and the whole thing. So I suppose that would be something that I would recommend to the extent we can do native plants in there and take advantage of the fact that we have native trees in that creek bed. But otherwise, it looks like a good project. So thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to go to public comment?
Yes, thank you. I should have done that before this. Yeah. Is there anybody from the public like to speak on this?
If you're a member of the public and you'd like to raise your hand, go ahead. And for the for the person calling in, if you have a question or a comment, you can press *9 and I will see your hand raised that way. And I am not seeing anyone's hand raised.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, let's go to item 6.2, the Canine Companions AT&T antenna.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Monet. And is it Christine? Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, Christine.
Christine. Okay,
Yes.
please, and welcome.
Thank you. Yes, so you may or may not recall, we brought a project on this site to the Waterways Advisory Committee not too long ago for a perimeter fence. It is a dog training facility for dogs that assist with disabled people, and they raise and train dogs, and they also train the humans that will use the dogs at this facility, and it's at 2965 Dutton Avenue. And this project is a minor design review and minor use permit to allow the installation of a 65-foot monopine and an 8 by 8 foot enclosure for equipment. And they have a 550 square foot lease area on the Canine Companions project site. Canine Companions is located in the southwest quadrant of the city, south of Sebastopol Road and west of Dutton Avenue. This is a zoomed out aerial of the entire campus. And as you can see, it's directly adjacent to Colgan Creek, which is a channelized, a flood control channel or channelized creek. It is zoned light industrial and is in the light industry general plan designation. And this exhibit shows the Colgan Creek area, hatched area along the western border of the project site. The project qualifies for a Class 3 exemption for new construction or conversion of small structures. Here's an aerial with the creek layer on top, so you can get an idea of how the creek aligns with the project site. And here is the creek master plan showing the modified creek, Colgan Creek 2, going along the western border of the property. So the project site is adjacent to Colgan Creek Reach 2 in the Citywide Creek Master Plan. Colgan Creek Reach 2 is designated as a modified creek in the plan, and it consists of approximately 6,751 linear feet. The portion of Colgan Creek adjacent to the project site consists of a flood control channel owned by the Sonoma County Water Agency, and there's an unpaved access road that exists directly east of the channel. This is the lease area for the AT&T antenna, and it shows it in context with the entire site. Here is a zoomed in site plan showing the lease area for the monopine, and that shaded rosy box indicates the setback from the edge of the chain link fence to the creek, which the applicant has indicated is 59 feet. The area up here indicates 11 feet from the fenced lease area to the existing fence that goes along the creek. There's one fence that is owned by the Sonoma County Water Agency, And we recently permitted a perimeter fence that would be placed inset from that fence to secure the canine companion site. So there would be 2 fences basically. Here's even more zoomed in area showing the lease area, the equipment shelter, where the equipment would be located, and an aerial view of the monopine. The applicant has provided some photo simulations of what it would look like when it's constructed. Here's another view from the gated entrance. Here's another view of the proposed monopine. And the pathway for permits would be a minor use permit and a minor design review approved by the zoning administrator at a future date. Right now it's tentatively scheduled in August. Cell towers have a very short shot clock for the city to be able to act. If the city does not act in a timely manner, these projects are deemed approved. So we have to move very quickly on cell towers. With that, I'm available for questions. The applicant, I believe I saw him as a participant. So he's available as well if you have questions about the specifics of the antenna. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Are there any comments, or I should say questions of Christine at the moment?
Question. Are there pre-existing cell phone towers with the same proximity to Santa Rosa Waterway as this, or would this be the closest precedent setting for how close you can get to a waterway?
I don't know the answer to that about other antennas that are within close proximity to a creek or waterway.
Steve, are there any? I remember one that was fairly close, I think, to a church on Sonoma Avenue. Is that true?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I believe that one was closer than this one, if I remember correctly.
I don't think that one came before us, though. Okay.
Arthur, you have a question?
Yes. Is there anything in here that's like not within guidelines or needs a waiver, or is it within the setbacks on this?
Sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
Oh, you know what? I got the microphone thingy up in the wrong place. Is this better now?
It's about the same.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try to speak up. Is there anything that's, I mean, I didn't see anything in the report that it's inside of setbacks, or it's needs a waiver or exception? Is there something here that we have to look at very, very specifically?
Yes, so it's similar to Monet's project because it's a channelized waterway that's controlled by the Sonoma County Water Agency. It can be closer setback wise to the creek, provided that it doesn't obstruct or hinder maintenance of the waterway. And we've received a indication that the Sonoma County Waterway has no issues with the proposed cell, they call it a cell tree or a cell tower at the proposed location.
Okay.
Any other questions of Christine? Okay, why don't we hear from the applicant, if the applicant would like to say something.
If you're the applicant, if you could just raise your hand for me, I can allow you to speak. Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands. There's one attendee named Zoom user. I'm not sure if that's your applicant, Christine.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking for Derek Turner if he's available.
There's no Derek.
Is the our guest wanting to ask a question, or should we could just have the committee ask questions at this point?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I would say we could just move forward.
Any other questions by the committee members? No, I don't see any. And I don't know that there's any public comment either at this point, correct, Michelle? No one
No,
requested.
it looks like there's no public comment.
Okay. Maybe we should go around and give our views on this proposal. Maybe we should start with Kevin this time, since I didn't include him last time.
No worries. I'm fine with this, and I don't have any other questions or comments.
Okay. Why don't we go reverse order here? Carol.
Yeah, way of the world. I assume this has to go through a lot more neighborhood review than just us for a cell phone tower. I kind of still get twitchy about cell phone towers. Maybe it's just me, but as from the Waterways Committee, I have no issues.
Mark.
I pretty much agree. I don't see much of an issue here. It seems like these cell phone towers are pretty much pro forma the way they're set up to kind of slide through. So, but I don't think we have any comments on this.
Arthur.
And this is just intended to be funny. Looking at slide 14, looks like it probably should be palm trees instead of a pine. No, I don't have any problems with this. So I have no comments.
Nor do I. I think this does not impact the creek directly in my point of view. So any other comments anybody would like to make before we move on to the next item?
Public comment?
No, I asked for that earlier. I hope that was conveyed to the public.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I do need reminding you sometimes.
As we all.
So I don't hear any requests from the public member to speak. So I think we will move on to the next item. Thank you, Christine. Okay, why don't we now discuss item 6.3, the Prince Memorial Greenway. And I think I will start this one because I requested this item to be on the agenda. And I do want to thank Amy for including it, and Michelle as well for revising the agenda on short notice. Last week, I attended a board and commission chair. I almost called it a lunch. It wasn't really a lunch, but our monthly meeting, and with the mayor. And he described a couple milestones coming up in the next couple of weeks. One, on August 3rd is a meeting on the council goals. And on August 15th, I believe it is, the council will be talking about the settlement with PG&E, the $95 million settlement. In my report at that meeting, I brought up the fact that we are going to be looking at the Prince Memorial Greenway and talking about its condition and looking at potential improvements to it. And I asked him what he would suggest in terms of our ability to enter into that process, the goal setting and the budget process. And he suggested we get something in to the council now so that they have it in front of them while they are discussing these items. I should say the funding that is going to be coming up and the decisions regarding that. So I put together some language that I submitted. Admittedly, it is very general. It does not have any specifics in terms of what our committee is going to be looking at. It doesn't have any comment on the existing situation or what result will occur. And that's mainly because I didn't want to get ahead of our committee discussions and the staff on this item. I thought it was better to at least let them know that we're going to be discussing this and coming back to them with possible requests for funds for improvements to the Greenway. But I didn't want to go out and say what I thought the situation was or what those improvements might include. So that's why when you look at the language, you'll of course know that it doesn't really say a whole lot except that we're going through this process. So I am open if you would like to discuss and change it in any way. Of course, we will discuss it in a second. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of description of why it is written the way it is. And next month, as Amy mentioned, we will be starting our discussions about the conditions and have more detailed analysis of that. And that will lead hopefully to some sort of recommendation for what occurs next. So with that, why don't we open up the conversation here if you have any questions or comments.
Looks good, Steve.
Yeah, it looks good, Steve. Thanks for taking this issue to the mayor, and thanks for drafting this wording. I think it looks good. I love the idea of us getting to evaluate and come up with some specific funding ideas. The only thought I have in addition would be, do we want to, as we're working on this, think about integrating with the downtown station area plan and the idea of daylighting the creek, which I know we're going to talk about next, but to the extent that the Prince Memorial Greenway will continue through a daylighted creek at the existing City Hall site, I don't know if it'll be appropriate in this effort to talk about that as well, but that project is near and dear to my heart, so I'd love to see us maybe include that if it's appropriate.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm assuming, Amy, that should we talk about that as part of our next item, or Kevin's bringing up an issue that I think it kind of blends into this whole question about the station area plan. I'm not sure if we need to write about it in this particular letter. My inclination would be to perhaps have it be in part of our comments on the.
It depends on how specific you want to get as far as what you want the city council to be looking at in their goal setting and also in that funding conversation. The downtown plan won't be adopted by that point. So if you did want to provide that specific request in this, I think that is something you can do. The statement that you proposed so far is pretty general. So that's up to your committee on what you would like.
Other comments by committee members?
Well, it is this is Mark, fairly general language, but I think it's good to at least have a placeholder in there reminding the city council of our role and we can be used as a resource basically to get those watershed values into the downtown plan and et cetera. So thank you for doing that, Steve. I think it's a good thing to do.
Thank you. Carol.
I've been looking for the statement madly on my iPad and I can't find it. Was that in email from Rochelle, from someone else?
The agenda, right?
It's on the agenda, yeah, under item 6.3.
If you would like, I can share my screen briefly with that language. Okay, give me just one moment. Can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Carol, do you have any thoughts about it or anything you'd like to bring up?
It's more the, I see this as a placeholder, and I am not savvy enough to know when the budget is truly up for review, where we're going to be. My crystal ball's not really clear these days.
If I can chime in, I think what the chair is discussing is there's a conversation scheduled for September that really is directly related to the PG&E settlement. And we have heard from the council that their intent is not to add that funding to the normal budget process or the general fund, but to find a unique opportunity and ways to use that funding. So they will be having a more robust conversation about what is appropriate for that PG&E settlement money to be funding. And so this would be provided to the council as part of that discussion, as well as their priority and goal setting that occurs in early August.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, I have a question for you regarding Kevin's suggestion. When we go through the update on the station area specific plan, will the council have the benefit of having our comments or will it just go to the consultant working on and your department working on the specific plan?
It can be both. So I'm happy to, if you want to do a resolution or a specific statement like this, that could certainly be part of the package to the council. And I do plan on discussing the input that we receive as we go out to the various subcommittees and boards related to the city. So I think all of that is on the table and an option for you. The downtown plan will include implementation and financing strategies. So as there are major infrastructure needs identified, that will get carried through to the implementation and financing piece as well.
Okay. So it sounds like, Kevin, we could include your suggestion in the comments we make on the downtown station area specific plan. Would that be okay? Because the rest of this is quite general. And just for your information, I was going to bring it up in a minute. There is also a future plan that was to expand the Greenway to the west over to Pearson Street. And that's not really called out that I saw on that specific plan draft. So that's yet another big improvement that we should bring up. So I think we can do that in context with the next item, if that's okay with you.
That sounds good.
Okay. Any other suggestions, comments on this language? I myself would give myself a B- if I were grading myself, but for writing, but it's best I think I can do at this point.
Was there a typo? I mean, make it B+, dude.
Well, I'm a critical grader, you know. Just getting ready for the JC, you know. Okay, let's go on to the next item if that's okay. Do we need a resolution or anything, Amy? Or are you okay with this just like it is?
I think it's fine the way it is. I'll work with the city manager's office to figure out the best way to forward this to the council for those discussions.
Okay.
Great.
I see a member of the public here, or maybe I don't know who Jeremy is.
Hey, good morning. This is Jeremy Gundy. I'm the Deputy Director of Field Services. I oversee parks, fleet, and street maintenance. So I was on the line just to see if there's any questions as far as the maintenance standpoint. I'll admit I'm fairly new in this position, but I have been with the city for about 22 years or so. I believe Dean Hamlin is also possibly on the call today, and he directly oversees the field maintenance operations out there along the Greenway. So maybe between the two of us, if there is any additional questions, we can try to answer those. I do appreciate the thought behind looking into additional funding for maintenance along the Greenway. And then also I understand there's that long time kind of discussion about the expansion of the Greenway. So yeah, I'm just here to observe and kind of see and answer any questions if you have.
Well, I know we're going to dig into this next month. I'm wondering if we should defer any questions at this point until we really get into that discussion. Amy, what do you suggest in terms of that?
Yeah, I think the context for the agenda item that's before you right now is really related to direction for the city council. So if there are conversations or direct questions about maintenance that can be held till next month, that would be ideal.
Okay. Jeremy, we are going to be talking about the downtown area specific plan next. I don't think we're going to get into tremendous detail, but it might be something that if you have time, you might find of interest. So thank you. We'll look forward to working with you and other staff members, of course. Should we move on to item 6.4, the update on the stationary specific plan?
Sure, although there was a Zoom, I'm not sure if it's a member of the public or not. Do you want to see if there's public comments on that last item, just in case?
Yeah, I thought I asked for that, but okay.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any hands raised for public comment.
Can I get one point of clarification? When we talk about the Prince Memorial Greenway, we start at the Fish and we go down to, what's our cross street?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I would say it's Pearson Street, but it has not been all, well, the improvements have not been completed past, is that Olive Street? Steve, Brady, is that true? I think it's Olive.
Railroad Street.
Railroad, sorry, Railroad Street. Yeah.
But when we're talking about it as a project, it's from the corner of Sonoma Avenue and Santa Rosa Avenue to Pearson.
That's how I think of it. Steve, is that how you look at the boundary of it as well?
I agree. That's the technical boundary for Prince Memorial Greenway.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we can move on to item 6.4, the draft. Amy.
Great, let me share my screen here. All right, can everyone see presentation?
Yes.
Great. So I thought I would just do a general overview of the plan and then we can get into more detail as we'd like. It's just come out last week, so I know a lot of people may not have read it quite yet. So if you attended last Wednesday's open house presentation, this will be similar, but it is just an overview. And I apologize, my kids are playing in the next room in case it is a little bit noisy. So just to start off, this is the history of where we've been with this plan. We have done quite a bit of robust community outreach back when we could do it in person. And then we went into a phase of really looking at alternatives and different preferred scenarios for the land use and transportation plan, and confirmed the preferred scenario with the city council in December of last year. And since that time, the consultant team and our staff team have been drafting the plan and drafting the environmental impact report. And those were both released last week for public consumption. And so we are in a public review period right now, and it will end on August 31st. And so during this time, I'll talk about it a little bit later, we are doing quite a bit of outreach, and we are talking to many of the standing boards and committees of the city. And then after that public review period ends, all the written comments on the EIR will be responded to and be encompassed into a final EIR, and then that will go back through the public hearing process, Planning Commission and City Council. So we are expecting the Planning Commission meeting for the recommendation to occur in September, and then the City Council meeting for potential adoption in October. So we are kind of racing against the clock, hoping that we don't have any PG&E power shutoffs and as we get into the fall season. And I'll also note, as far as what's encompassed in this plan is not just an update of the specific plan, but also the corresponding zoning ordinance. So all the implementing zoning pieces will be coming together as a package. So this can go into effect with the implementing zoning at the same time. Here are the boundaries of our plan. So the boundaries have changed slightly from the existing 2007 plan. And really it's just to encompass more of a complete neighborhood in certain areas. So it is mainly the Railroad Square and core of the Courthouse Square area, along with the neighborhoods that outlie the downtown area. And it's probably no surprise, but the one primary reason we're doing this plan is to really invigorate development and increase housing potential downtown. The 2007 plan envisioned quite a few housing units that have not materialized due to a variety of factors, including economic downturn. But we have really been striving to review all aspects of this plan and trying to remove barriers and streamline development as much as possible with really constructive and firm standards and guidelines on how this development should look. So the 6 key goals for the update are these listed on the screen, but it really is related to housing, really creating a cultural and economic focus for the downtown core, and providing a mix of uses and really being able to enhance the multimodal connections between SMART and through the rest of the downtown area, bike and pedestrian on all of those opportunities as well. So as far as the community engagement that has occurred, we have made every effort to really hear from the community and incorporate comments as we've heard them. And unfortunately, during the end of this review period, everything will be virtual in line with the health order. So we are going to continue doing this robust community outreach and have started with reaching out to the people and the community groups that have worked with us the last round. It's just a starting point, but we are really open to other opportunities and any comments you have or standing committees that we can come and talk to as well. So the draft plan is broken up into these specific chapters. And then this is the overall vision statement for the planning effort, and it's to create a vibrant, sustainable, important community gathering place where we celebrate diversity, heritage, and local culture, live, work, and share, and that everyone plays a part in shaping downtown in the future. So these are some of the key moves that are different within the chapter. So for land use, there's not a lot of change to the existing land uses. So we are looking at the areas that have the most development potential and how do we provide a catalyst to development. And so you'll see that there are identified new zoning districts. And in these zoning districts, they really do create a more of a mixed use component and provide a greater opportunity for live work uses, and especially in certain neighborhoods such as Maxwell, where there could be opportunities for a mix of industrial and residential and more of an incubator type situation for businesses. And then one of the biggest moves for this plan is the change to floor area ratio. So instead of density and height, it will be based on FAR. So I'll go into a little bit about that in the next few slides here. So as far as what's projected under this plan, we are anticipating 7,000 new housing units, and that is a table showing the development that was analyzed for the environmental impact report. So of course, this is all gradual and programmatic. This is our best scenario, best case of what could occur under this planning effort. And we'll talk a little bit about how this could gradually occur. So these red outlined areas in the land use map are what we call opportunity areas. And so these are the areas where we project there to be the greatest opportunity for change and for development to occur. And that's based partly on location and proximity to transit, but also on vacant or underutilized properties or interests that we know of from the property owners to develop. Again, these are the new land use categories, and this is in more detail in the plan, but kind of gives you an overview of where these land uses will occur. So the core mixed use is around the courthouse square area, and then square has more of a station mixed use. So those are more transit oriented type of businesses and restaurants that can be associated with the smart station there. And then, so for the neighborhoods themselves, we don't anticipate any change. The one primary focus of the plan is to really increase the preservation of those historic neighborhoods and not to be really catalyzing development for those areas themselves. So as far as the change to floor area ratio, visual on how this actually works. So it really depends on the area and the height that developers are wanting. And so there's a lot of different potentials. This gives a lot of flexibility to the developers on how they want to develop a certain site, especially for those sites that have major constraints on the property. So another key aspect was really looking at affordability and homelessness. So we are, through this plan, hoping to encourage larger units that are more appropriate for families. So three bedrooms plus, as I mentioned before, the live work units, and then smaller micro units that can be considered affordable by design that you see in a lot of the more urban areas. So a lot of the policies and structures in this plan are envisioning an increased density that will occur. So making sure that the units really reflect what we want in a very dense downtown core situation. So mobility, this is just identifying the major transit areas. So the courthouse square, of course, in the transit mall, and then the Railroad Square Smart Station. So the key moves related to mobility is, first of all, what happens with that 4th Street connection? How do we connect downtown to Railroad Square? That has been something that we really wanted to look at and bolster beyond what the 2007 plan has done. And we don't have any indication that the Simon Mall will be leaving the area anytime soon. So what this plan envisions is a foot connection through the mall, and something that can be not just during mall hours, but something more robust than that. The plan also envisions a trolley or a trackless bus type situation to circulate from the smart station to the transit mall and then through the entire planning area. And then the other interesting thing in this plan is really looking at the parking situation and how we create a balanced supply of parking and what opportunities we have to incentivize development with the existing parking that's being underutilized at the current time. So this is just a snapshot of the mobility map that's within the plan. And this is largely consistent with our bike and pedestrian master plan. There are only just a few slight changes, but that bike and pedestrian master plan, as you may know, was most recently adopted. So this plan really is trying to incorporate a lot of those recent adoptions and corridor designations as well. And so this does talk about daylighting the creek in this, and the Prince Memorial Greenway being a prime conduit as far as the class 1 pathway that it is. And then again, the east-west connections that are important to really make sure that there's connections not only to the Roseland community, to downtown, but also across the freeway and across the from Railroad Square to the downtown area. So parking, this is somewhat unique to this plan. So within those opportunity zones, so those areas that were outlined in red, basically those areas are the most constrained as far as parking and the existing parking requirements that we have. So this plan actually unbundles parking. So it does not require a minimum parking requirement for housing development. Instead, it provides increased flexibility to developers to identify what the market needs for those specific sites. And that will change over time as our downtown becomes more dense, as there's more jobs downtown and less of a need for the personal automobile. So this really also looks at how we utilize the existing parking we have. So there already are discussions with some applicants on creating partnerships or contracts for areas of parking garages to be associated with new housing development. So of that overabundance of supply, how do we encourage development? And so there are policies in the plan that really provide like a minimum number of housing units when the city will entertain having a contract to provide for instance, a portion of a parking garage. And let's see, I think that is about all to talk about as far as parking. So urban design is really the key chapter for the committee to look at. And this does serve to update the design guidelines and the standards that are currently in existence. And it really is hoping to activate those ground floor uses and to provide a transition between what could be a very high density project next to smaller single family homes in historic preservation districts, and looking at that kind of transition zone and how we can make that like a pleasing environment and not just be a stark difference between the two. So this chapter also talks a lot about historic resources and how we preserve the structures that are age eligible. How do we go through that investigation of what should be preserved and what should be designated historic? Not all of downtown is located in an historic preservation district, and there are quite a few properties that are within age eligible areas. That slide's a little bit later on, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. But one component that I did want to talk about today is active ground floor uses. So based on your comments from the last meeting, this is a tool that we feel could be utilized for the creeks area as well and the Prince Memorial Greenway. So there is a set of policies and maps in the plan that identify which areas or which properties need to have this active ground floor activation. And then what do we mean by active ground floor? So it doesn't always mean that they have to have retail, but it needs to have the fenestration and the street furniture and the public art and things that are that activate that space and create a more pleasing pedestrian environment. So we try to give enough flexibility where it may not always require retail, but there has to be enough of a activation to make sure that that street front is active. So one of the things to consider is whether this should be a designation along the Prince Memorial Greenway. That the plan currently does not state that, but I think that is the logical step to go to be able to really make sure that those businesses are putting their eyes on the creek. So again, here's a little bit of information about those transition zones between the historic and the downtown. So the proposal in the plan is to really create a daylight plane. So it will allow structures to be across the street in close proximity, but not a 3, 5, 10-story building. It needs to be stepped back. So it does create a more pleasing environment and a transition to some of these historic areas. So another big piece of this plan is the parks and civic space. We've really reimagined how we require parks and recreation and what we want to include and encourage. So we've worked really closely with Parks and Rec on this and tried to identify general areas in the plan where we do want to see new parks site. So, and then one of the, I mentioned earlier in the department report, one of the things that we have funding to do right now is an historic survey of the downtown. And so we are going to be focused on these opportunity areas. And this map shows how many properties we have that are actually age eligible, but that we don't have surveys completed for. So that provides a really ambiguous playing field for a developer. And what we want to do is identify which of these structures are truly significant and are age eligible and should be designated as landmarks or with the historic designation in our code, and which structures are eligible for redevelopment. We also have a chapter related to public services and sustainability. So a lot of this relates to some of the environmental hazards and just police services and things of that sort. And so it does identify infrastructure needs. We have been working very closely with the water department and others to identify the sewer capacity needs and all of that. There has been a water supply assessment prepared and incorporated into the environmental impact report, which will also help to streamline some of that housing development that we hope to get. So I won't get into these too much, but we do have utilities and upgrades that will be required, and those have been identified in the plan with the cost estimates prepared. And then, of course, a huge component of what we do is really looking at emergency response. So this being one of the first plans that we have been embarking on since the 2017 fires is really looking at how do we bolster the emergency response and how do we plan for future emergency events. Sorry, my kids are singing in the next room. But so, and then because this is a specific plan, it does include a huge list of needs that need to occur to accomplish this plan at full build out. And under state law, the specific plan is required to put funding mechanisms associated with these things. So we need to put out a plan that can be accomplished and funded and what those funding needs are. So as far as phasing, as I said, we can't really expect all of this to occur at the same time. It is a 20-year plan with most specific plans within the first 10 years, you really do expect to see the success of whether it's working, what's not. So in general, specific plans are updated about every 10 years, especially one such as this that really does envision a high level of development to occur. So as part of the EIR and the utilities, there has been a projection of how this phased approach will occur. So, and then what will need to happen as far as infrastructure to support the development that will be in here in the next 5 and then 5 to 15 years. So this is just a little more about that financing. So all of that is incorporated into the specific plan itself. So that is pretty much my presentation here. Let me figure out how to unshare my screen. I did something to my Zoom and now I can't get out of it. Oh, here we go. Stop share. So anyways, I'm happy to get in depth. I can pull up the individual chapters and policies if you would like. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Amy. Before we get into the meat of this, I was thinking about having the public input part because we may wind up going from questions to suggestions very quickly. So is there anyone from the public who would like to weigh in on this plan?
It actually looks like we have no members of the public currently.
Okay.
But Steve, I will confirm that you did ask that if it comes up later.
Thank you. Never hurts. Okay, why don't we just go ahead and whoever would like to ask questions or make comments, go right ahead.
Well, I'll jump in. Amy, thank you. I'm sure you have to repeat this many times for all of the different committees, and there's a lot here, and every time I hear it, I learn something new. So thanks for taking us through it. I was pleased at the July 15th open house to hear talk about daylighting the creek mentioned in that meeting, because that was some of the feedback I think we gave, and certainly some things that I submitted in the early stages of this. I'm still not seeing a ton about that in the plan itself, in the draft, and I'm not sure if I'm just missing it because I haven't seen everything. I totally agree with your take on the active first floor element of this plan being something we could apply to the Prince Memorial Greenway and to daylighting the creek if that happens, because that's certainly part of my vision. My comments in the last section about whether we want to include in the upcoming maintenance of the Prince Memorial Greenway some reference to the downtown station area plan mostly has to do with the fact that I think we can continue to maintain the Prince Memorial Greenway, but in some ways I feel like it's a Band-Aid that we continue to put on that stretch, albeit important and really welcome, until we get eyes on the creek and have some of that development along the creek that it makes it feel like a safe area for people to frequent and therefore maintain, et cetera. Then I think we're putting a short-term Band-Aid on it. So I love the idea of the first floor being able, looking out on the Prince Memorial Greenway, giving some eyes on the creek. I wonder if there, in the plan, are there any specifics, like we've talked in this committee about the Sears Auto Building and how prime that is for some great development, especially on the first floor there, just adjacent to the creek. Are there specifics, like those kinds of specifics, will they be called out in the plan, or is that too much detail?
I have to say that I don't think your comments from your last meeting were incorporated in a robust way that I would want them in there. I know that comments were forwarded to the consultant, and I really feel like the plan needs more of that. So we do have policies in the existing Creek Master Plan. There are some policies in the mobility chapter of this to really look at kind of the safety impacts and crime prevention through environmental design, some of those things. So we don't, I really want more direction in this plan to respond to your comments about creating the eyes on the creek, especially with, you know, the development that will be occurring with the Sears building. And I personally, I just don't see it in here. And this is a draft. And that is one of the biggest comments that we want to be able to incorporate. So to the extent that you don't see it, you're right. We've noted it as well and want to make sure it's there. It is a balancing act. We have heard from developers that it is a little, they don't want something that's too prescriptive. We know there's challenges with some of the businesses there now, Hyatt, Shady Oaks, and various other ones that have tried to make an effort to pay attention to the creek and then have had issues. But this is supposed to be a visioning document. This is trying to set up an aspiration of what we want it to be. And although, you know, there are existing problems, this is not the document to be hindered by that. So I really think that it does need more. And if you have specifics that you want to include, I'm happy to put them in, but it is something on the staff level that we recognize isn't there right now.
Great. All right. Thank you. That's great. Well, I think one specific I would see is maybe we take that ground floor activation concept and I see we call out certain areas in your slide. You showed a lot of the downtown areas and Railroad Square that would get that first floor activation vision. Maybe we call that out for some areas along the creek, like where the Sears building is. Yeah, again, hopefully not to limit developers too much, but just to say this is our vision. So that would be one specific. I think it'd be great to see. Yes, this slide here. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is the map and the plan. And so what we had asked for, and it just didn't make it in this iteration, is that active ground floor overlay actually be along the creek all the way to Pearson.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Sounds good. Then the one other specific, and then I'll be quiet, is I think in one slide it talked about daylighting Matanzas Creek. And I think the part I'm envisioning is underneath City Hall there, which I think is Santa Rosa Creek downstream from where Matanzas joins. So just minor comment.
Yes, thank you.
On the first floor activation, to me, it is implied but not stated that means street front. People traditionally access from the street front. We are highlighting, and I don't know if it would be called out, not just street front and not just necessarily back of building. It could be side of building. This could be both real exciting for potential commercial storefronts. It could be really scary, but I think it needs to really be called out that other than street front is expected in that first floor activation.
Great, thanks.
If I might, I want to mention something that kind of corresponds with what Kevin is bringing up. I was thinking about a statement at the beginning that we submit both to the consultants and staff and to the council that says something to the effect that the Prince Memorial Greenway plays a crucial role in the downtown as open space, bike and pedestrian access, and parks. And then says expansion of the Greenway, including the daylighting of the creek on the City Hall site, the future daylighting of the creek, and expansion of the Greenway to the west to Pearson Street will provide needed open space in an increasingly dense downtown. Something to that effect, because as the downtown gets so many more residents, the open space is going to become much more precious and important. So I think it would be really helpful for us to really say up front in our response that the expansion should be on the table because Kevin's right, we need to look further into the future.
Also, it is a unique, there's no other element that has this many components: transportation, water, park. It's a unique element in the downtown plan.
I think that's great. And would you mind emailing me that language you just said?
Not at all.
Okay.
Of course. I know there are others who would like to speak. I have some other suggestions too.
Yeah, I'd like to, I agree with everything that's been said, and I was really disappointed to see the lack of integrating what we talked about at least up until this point. Um, when we talk about or think about the vision of this entire plan, the Creek Master Plan is a vision also. It's a really long term vision where there's segments that are being addressed on sometimes a project by project basis, but the plan is for interconnectivity. Um, that's the vision of it, and this doesn't this vision doesn't really take that into account, and it's really disappointing. I'd like to look at, so I understand this better. It's called Map UDCS-3 Age Eligible Properties. Could we throw that up, Amy? And I'm thinking
Which map was that? I'm sorry.
it's Map UD. Well, I don't know where it is. I'm in chapter 4 of the Urban and Design, and it's page 26. But you showed it also, opportunity areas. You did show it in your brief.
So not this one, right?
No, it's a bunch of red polygons.
The one that showed the opportunity areas. Maybe it's land
Yeah,
use.
that's it. That's it right
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand what this actually is, because when I think about opportunity areas and then this age eligible properties in historic areas, there's two areas where it crosses a creek. One to the east by City Hall, and then one um, looks like it's the Prince Memorial Greenway, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. I don't know what that is. It's underneath the Smart Station, south of 3rd Street. But these are.
Oh, that's the Olive Park area, I think.
What's that now?
Olive Park area, isn't it?
Is it Olive Park? It's on 3rd Street though. That Olive Park is south of 3rd Street, isn't it?
Oh, maybe you're right.
I'm not sure, but it's two areas that are crossing it, and it just seems like I don't know what the criteria for this map are, but it seems like there's other areas of the creek that are opportunity areas, which is what all these red boxes are, but the map is age eligible properties. So I'm not quite sure I understand this map, and I'd sure like to see more red polygons around the creek. Amy, can you talk at this at all?
Yeah, really just where we anticipate the most development to occur. And it is the areas where we're planning to do the historic surveys. So this map does, although if you took the red off, we did identify other properties that are age eligible. But the survey work that we're going to do to help streamline the development will be focused in these red areas. So we just couldn't, identify the whole of the downtown, but really wanted to focus around some of these key properties and neighborhoods, and especially the core and the smart station. So I can't speak directly to why these properties were included and others were not, but I know there have been conversations with property owners as well. So perhaps there was interest expressed as well.
Okay, thanks. It seems to me that the daylighting of the creek is like a major impediment to everything in the downtown area. I think if it was daylighted, then it would be easy for people to develop laterals going into it, and then using the creek as a west to east, east to west crossway to connect Smart and downtown. But it seems like that's the biggest impediment. I'm just not sure. I'm just kind of speaking out loud here. Okay, thank you. That'll
You should have
mute it
unmuted.
again, Mark.
Anxious to jump in. Okay. So a couple things. I just wanted to second what people have said. I think the active first floors idea is a great idea to get the creek, more into the fabric of the community. As Carol said, it seems like it's more oriented towards street access, but I think it blends very nicely into the eyes on the creek thing. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind in the future. As far as expanding the open space, that certainly seems to tie in to what Steve had said with the idea of extending the greenway. I think that would be a fabulous idea, because now it just kind of stops, and it would be great if it would continue on. So maybe that's something in the long run that we can look at, accomplish a few things. But yeah, I appreciate the attempts to keep us involved in the process and make sure that our comments are received and reflected in the documents. So that's pretty much what I have to say on this.
So a few minutes ago, I read a statement about the role of the greenway in terms of the future and so on. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe that statement should be included in that comment from the last item, as far as prioritization and funding of improvements, because it talks about more of maintenance and operations kind of issues. But it doesn't really get into this discussion we're having now about the future. So I'm kind of rethinking about whether we should include that. Kevin brought it up earlier, and I was thinking it could be as part of this, but then I'm not sure that this will go to the council immediately in terms of decision making, whereas that other part, maybe we should include it in there as well. What do you all think about putting another brief sentence there in terms of the letter regarding the budget and that issue, having this statement be there as well?
I like that idea, Steve. Thanks for drafting that additional language.
I think it would probably be good to just get it on the table, because that obviously is something that this committee feels strongly about. So I'll put something together, Amy, and just send that as an addition to the language we had, if that's okay.
Steve?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Steve, something perhaps about both short-term and long-term visions and needs?
Okay.
Good idea. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of detail in this report, in this plan on development and development standards and design and so on. But the amenities that are in the downtown are there's really not as much. I mean, there are places where the creek is mentioned and parks are mentioned, but I don't think they have much detail in terms of what we really anticipate, why they're important, and how development should integrate with the open space we have downtown and be kind of so there would be links between the development and the creek. I think that needs a little more attention for the interconnectedness, because we really need the surrounding land uses to be developed in a way that enhance the experience on the greenway. Whereas right now we have a separation and an isolation of the greenway. So unless we start including more interconnectedness and require it in any development that occurs along the creek, I think we may continue to miss opportunities as we have in the past. Anyway, that's what my thought is. Others?
Well said, Steve. That was well said. Thank you.
I don't know if you need detailed language or not, Amy, but that's something I think should be looked at.
Yeah, I don't think, I understand the sentiment and what you all are hoping, and I'm on the same page. And as this public review period goes on the rest of August, if you do have specific language, pass it on. But otherwise, we'll do our best to make sure that this is reflected.
One other aspect that we haven't talked about is increasing the usage of people being on the creek. At times it's isolated. A lot of community members don't feel comfortable going on the creek for one reason or another. And I'm wondering if we might encourage more attention by the city for activities along the creek or events along the creek, in addition to just the kind of the physical characteristics of the development that occur.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Other ideas by committee members?
I would love to know if there's anything currently on the table we work in a void. We talked several months ago about the potential for the cannery site becoming high density housing. And wouldn't it be great, the chicken and the egg? Do we clean up the creek before the development to encourage the development? Do we get the development to encourage cleaning up the creek? I don't know what's going on. I don't know if anything's going on. How can we come up with suggestions if we don't know if there's anything currently in the works?
Yeah, I can give you a little update that there has been an application submitted, I believe, for the cannery site. If not, it's imminent, as in this week. I believe it was submitted last week. Michelle, you might know more than I do. So that will be moving through the process. We've also received an application for conceptual design review for the Smart Station housing project. And I think those are the only two that really relate to the creek areas. But yeah, there's been a lot of development downtown that's still been moving along, and it's coming through the process.
It might be good to have those items before the committee in a conceptual stage before they get too much on a map in final draft form, let's say.
I will have to look and see what type of project the cannery project came in as, but there is a new state law, SB 35, that creates a ministerial process for affordable housing projects. I believe that's one of them, but it really, it basically states that we can't have any discretion on the project. So it's going to solely rely on our standards for objective design, waterways, all of that. So that, I think, is one of those projects that will be streamlined in that way. But I can check on that and get back to you as well.
I would also suggest looking at the language in the Creek Master Plan. My recollection is that there is a access point between the cannery project and 3rd Street and the creek at 3rd Street, somewhere in that area, that is specified. We had this come up when John Stewart came before the committee when he had a senior housing project that he wanted approved there. And there was a difference of opinion, I would say, between the developer and our committee regarding that. But that is something I think that perhaps should be looked at, as well as really all the connections that are anticipated between the smart site and the creek. It's, as Carol mentions, it's kind of hard to know what is really being evaluated there and what might result. And that's a very critical connection there, because it also links to the smart station and to the bike trails there and so on. And the links between the Greenway and the downtown are inadequate, as we know. I know there's a connection at 3rd Street that is included in this plan that would take the bike path, the smart trail that would go up to the station, but it's still the connectivity is poor.
Yeah, I think that's actually being discussed with that applicant right now on what that is supposed to be. So it's been interesting to see these projects come through, because they are adhering to our 2007 plan, but anticipating the adoption of the new plan. So that is one reason why we really want to flesh out the zoning ordinance that will go along with this. because there are some pieces like that where we can put in, codify in the zoning code, which will really make sure that there's more detail and more requirements of the developers to adhere to certain pieces.
Other comments by committee members? I think we're okay.
Can I just note, just in closing, that we do have an outreach plan that's going to be published in the next few weeks that will include virtual meetings with all of the historic preservation districts. And we are going to be holding a joint meeting with Design Review Board and Cultural Heritage Board. And then there is a public hearing planned on the EIR with the Planning Commission on August 13th. So those will be the next touch points, but that, and then the public comment period will close in August 31st.
So Amy, am I correct that we will have a meeting on the 27th of August?
Correct.
Okay, just so everybody knows. And I'm also wondering if any of the remaining committee members said they would attend and maybe ran into any technical problems. I don't know if that's the case. Perhaps they just couldn't make this particular meeting, but if they were going to attend, it might be good to connect with them and see if there was some technical issue. Michelle, do you think they were to attend or not?
I had heard from Adam Sharon, and he could not attend this meeting, and I did not hear from Charles Carter. So I'm not sure if he was planning to attend or not. I did not hear back from him.
Okay. Okay, any concluding comments by committee members?
Point, refresh my memory. At some point, we spend a lot of time with Prince Memorial Greenway, and I think it's a very valid place to spend a lot of time. At one point, we were going to hear a report from Park and Rec about Prince Memorial, and I think that kind of ended up evaporating with the whole COVID thing. The short term, the long term, the financial, there's so many components that I don't have a handle on that I personally would like more background information as we move forward aggressively on making this happen. I feel that my tool basket is very inadequate. So I'm hoping.
I was just going to note in August, we will have Jen Santos, Deputy Director of Parks, attending. Her and her team actually got activated at the Emergency Operations Center and just got released in the last few weeks. So we were kind of working with their availability. And so we are going to plan to bring that item along with looking at maintenance as well to the August 27th meeting.
So committee members, Amy suggested sending in any comments you had. I assume individual members can send in comments regarding the station area plan or suggested language. But I also have a question about that meeting in August, because sometimes pictures speak much louder than words. And I'm wondering if it would be okay for us to submit at least a few photos that might be able to better explain the concerns of the committee regarding the condition of the Greenway. Would that be okay to submit a couple photos or to you, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, and I will note you do have another meeting before the end of the comment period. And even if you did, you could always supply comments after the fact as well. But the Planning Commission meeting on August 13th, there will be an overview and the summary of the plan, probably similar to what you saw today. But it is more centered on the environmental impact report. And so in September, that is the Planning Commission hearing where they will be diving into the plan itself and making recommendations. So I think that September meeting is actually more key as far as comments on the plan.
Amy, I was more thinking about our Waterways Committee meeting when we talked with the parks folks about the conditions that we observed when we took the walking tour back in whenever that was, October or so of last year. maybe having a couple photos of the greenway that might explain some of the issues that have led us to this discussion next month.
Sure, absolutely. We can include any photos you would like.
So if anybody has any they would like to send Amy, we could at least perhaps have a few that would at least point out some of the issues. And I'll submit a few also. Okay, unless there are other comments, I think we'll conclude our meeting. Got a lot accomplished today. Thank you all.
Yes, good meeting. Thanks, everybody. Nice working with all of
Thank
you.
Okay,
Thanks, Amy.
everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you to the staff too,
Yeah, thanks to the
Stay
staff.
well.
Michelle and Amy and everyone else. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.